It is cold in Iowa. The basketball teams, even colder. What's happening with the men's team? What's going on with the women? It is a long basketball season. We dissect today. Locked On Hawkeye.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, hit the subscribe button. Just takes a moment and helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. It was a busy weekend and a frustrating one as Iowa falls both on the men's and the women's side of things out on the West Coast. So we go back to Friday night, and after some time to step back and to look big picture at what happened in the game alone. And that's where we're going to start, and then we'll get into some big picture, because we got a women's basketball team that's lost 5 consecutive. We're going to get into that. We got a men's team that is teetering on the brink of falling out of contention, falling away from being an NCAA tournament team for the second year. The fan base is checked out, and there are some concerning elements to this program. And also want to talk about Beth Goetz, the new Iowa athletic director, and what is in front of her going forward. This is a different time of Iowa athletics and what we're used to. And we'll talk about the AD, Beth Goetz, coming up here in just a little bit. But let's first go back to Friday night. And I had some people at halftime saying, hey, can you go live? Look, I had family in town. It's our Christmas weekend with my wife's family. They always come from 2 different sides of us, St. Louis and Sioux City. They meet in the middle in Des Moines. And so we have our Christmas this weekend and just didn't have time. Didn't have my setup in the basement because, well, family had taken over the basement setup that I normally have. So just wasn't able to get an instant reaction podcast. And I was hot Friday night and watching it unfold, and it's not losing. Look, we're Iowa fans, right? We're used to losing. We've seen losses. This is not some kind of program or some kind of athletic department where it is only about championships, those kind of things. No, we're used to losing. But to lose in that fashion, to lose in the way that they did. 9 out of 9 from the field to open things up for UCLA. A UCLA team that came into this one also with their own set of issues. Right, the Bruins were coming in playing some bad basketball. And Iowa made them look like they were Auburn. They were Duke. They were one of the best teams in the country, and that's not the case. UCLA has talent. It's not a talent problem. But they came in not just losing 4 in a row, but losing against Nebraska, Rutgers. Michigan and Maryland are above average. They're solid teams, a fringe top 25 teams. But we're not talking about the who's who, and they were blown out in both of those games. This was a team that was playing bad basketball. And they looked like one of the best teams in the country. Iowa could do nothing again on the defensive end of the floor. And this becomes the same song and dance. And yes, Peyton Sandford, he leaves the game with the injury, and that sucks for him, right? He's 0 for 4 from the floor, has a putrid performance as I was getting blown out. The first 10 minutes of the game, they're down 34-11. It's over. There's no coming back from that. And the USC game, and when you couple it together, we knew going out there a split was at minimum. What Iowa needed to get was a split. Because now they sit at 3-4. And though the next 3 games are very winnable, Minnesota and Penn State at home, followed up by the road trip against Ohio State. These are all winnable games. You're in a spot now where you might have to win them all. And that's where we are. And when you look at the next 5 games in totality, I think Iowa needs to go a minimum 4-1 to have any sniff of the tournament. And this team isn't close to it. They quit. For the second straight game, they quit on the defensive end. It's laziness. It's ineptitude. You can't tell me that over the last decade, and since Adam Woodbury departed, last time that Iowa was anything close to decent defensively is when Woodbury was there. Since then, they have finished no better than 75th in the country in adjusted defensive efficiency. 75th is the high water mark. 75th. You're telling me that all the guys for the last decade that have been recruited are all terrible defensively? No, it's scheme. It's the inability or the unwillingness of Fran McCaffrey to coach that end of the floor and do it at a high level. He doesn't have the want. He's not going to change. It's entertaining. And here's another part that we've talked about a ton. Where is Fran? Where is he mentally? I think it's something fair to ask. We have a coach who's had plenty of success, has won a ton of games, and there is something very commendable about what he has done year in and year out in the Big Ten. You look at the consistency over the last decade plus, it's incredible. But even if they're taking a small step back this year, and you look up and what they've actually accomplished the last couple of years, 10-10 last year in the Big Ten, 11-9, 12-8. The high water mark was the 14-6 year in the 2020-21 season. We know what a weird season that was. There was limited capacity. It was just out all over the place. The inability to punch your way into the second weekend, to never get there, and that's where we are. But to have this kind of performance, this part of the season, it's unthinkable. It really is. And to be this bad on the defensive end. This team's now 159th in the country in defensive efficiency. You can't. You can't at this level do this. And here's another thing. You go through and look at different places. I was just mentioning Ken Pomeroy. But you can also sort at another one of the analytic websites. So this is a free one. It is Bart Torvik. And Bart Torvik, where you can go and see what teams have been at any time. So over the last week, just a couple games, I get that. But over the last week, Iowa, it's bad. I mean, it's really, really bad what they are in the defensive end. And as I scroll through my notes here and try to find it, because I had it just a moment ago, and now I can't find the actual number because it's incredible. Where's the search? Here we go. Search. No, that's not what I'm looking for. Oh, this is a disaster on the air. But what we're looking for. Oh, boy. All right, fine. Here we go. Iowa. What they are. Here we go. All right. So Iowa, this is the number I was looking for. Iowa over the last week in defensive efficiency. This is everybody in the country. Iowa's 358th in the country in defensive efficiency. 358. There's 363 teams. That's how bad it's been this week. But it's not just this week. And we all know this as Iowa fans. Fran checked out. This fan base has checked out. Everybody has checked out. And that's where we are. The frustration of basketball. Well, the last couple of years, at least we've had the women's team. We'll get to that. It's not much better. 5 losses in a row for the women. Beth Goetz, did she make a mistake in taking the easy road and hiring Jan Jensen? That's next as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Prize Picks. The place to get real money sports action is Prize Picks. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now that it's playoff time, there's no better way to get on the action with Prize Picks. Here's how it's worked. Simple. More or less of at least 2 players. If your pick hits, you could win 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. Going through, taking a look coming up this week. Travis Kelce, he had a monster game in the divisional round. You want to say more or less 70 receiving yards. They got you covered there at Prize Picks. Maybe you're taking a look at the championship game over on the NFC. How about Hurts? More or less than a half touchdown rush. That's what you do. That's what you hit on Prize Picks. And the flex play, you can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. With the app, get your winnings fast, sometimes as little as 15 minutes. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing with Prize Picks. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks. Run your game. Trent Condon back with you again, Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. So Iowa sucked on Friday night, and it was bad. And then we look at what's kind of happening with this program. And what's the attendance going to be like tomorrow night with Minnesota coming in? Here come the Gophers, one of your rivals, right? Program that played a ton of games. Maybe has played, if memory serves, as many games as ever than anybody that you've ever played, I believe is the case. But that aside, it's a bad Minnesota team. You should win this game comfortably. Iowa's been at least okay. They're favored at Kent Pomeroy by 10 points, right? Easy win. Then you get Penn State Friday night. Now, if they don't, look, we have to remember this team was a play away from losing at home to Nebraska and Northwestern. Northwestern, you need a buzzer-beating 30-foot heave to get it done. And you need to get it done in overtime against Nebraska in a game that you trailed. These are average teams, probably similar to Penn State. Now, Minnesota's worse than them. But where's the hope? Where's the intrigue? Where is it that you say, all right, this team, here they come? Because I've fallen into that trap. And as much as I love Drew Thelwell and just how hard he tries, he can't be alone. You know, you look at the defensive numbers of this group, and I mentioned what they are overall and as a team. It's some of the worst in the country over the last week, but just overall. But here's another one. And these are numbers defensively this year, an advanced number. So Iowa, an average defensive rating for an individual player is 100, right? Just an estimate of points allowed per 100 possessions. 100 is average. The best player on the team right now is Riley Mulvey. Okay. Riley doesn't play a ton. He's only played 8 games this year. Of the regulars, the best player on the team in defensive rating is Owen Freeman, followed closely by Drew Thelwell. Out of the regulars, if you will. Again, 100 is average. Below average is anything above that. Their best player is 103. 103.4, the number for Owen Freeman. 104.8. I mean, individually, these players are awful on the defensive end. The worst of the bunch, Price Sanford. Might surprise you that Josh Dix is second worst. Laje Dabali right there with him. They can score. But the unwillingness, the inability, the front, it's so frustrating. So we look at this, and we're going to talk about Beth Goetz and what she has. But is there any coming back? You know, at this point in time, we're frustrated, right? Watching this team, watching the same things over and over and over again. It's Groundhog Day. I feel like smashing the alarm clock like Bill Murray, right? I just, time after time after time, anytime you have any semblance of hope with this program, it just completely fades away. The fan base is checked out. Nobody wants to go to the games anymore. You have a less than half full Carver-Hawkeye arena for conference games. And that's paid attendance is about half. And the number of people that are actually making their way through the turnstiles is worse than that. Can it be saved? Can Fran McCaffrey pull the program out of this? And we can argue if it's fair. We can argue the merits of it. But it looks like a guy himself, much like the team did in those 2 games that quit. Fran McCaffrey has that look that he's defeated. Seeing him pace around with his hands in his pockets. No Fran freak out. No Fran red face. He yelled once at Brock Harding. But come on. I'd hope any coach would do that. Where's the will? Where's the Fran McCaffrey that we had? And I know a lot of people didn't like that. They didn't like the fire. They didn't like that at times it went over the top, and it did. But at least you knew this was a guy that had some will to him, that had some want, that wanted to coach the guys up. Fran McCaffrey looks right now to be a guy that's just happy to get his paycheck, go about his business, have some fun coaching some offensive basketball, roll the ball out, and we'll see what happens. I don't think that's actually the case. I don't truly believe that that's who Fran McCaffrey is and the way that he's wired and the way that he's built. But on the surface, he definitely looks checked out. A Sweet 16 run, does that get him back into the good graces of Iowa? Probably not. I don't think a fan base is suddenly going to be flooding back into Carver-Hawkeye Arena, even if Iowa gets into the tournament and gets to the second weekend. It's not enough. It's not that bridges have been burned. And that's the interesting part about this is you look at the totality, you look at the success overall, and it looks very solid. But we know as Hawkeye fans that that's not the case. That's not that Fran's MFing people, when he goes to the grocery store. That's not what this is. Just after a certain amount of time, a fan base seeing the same things over and over again, they start to check out. And worse than the anger that a lot of us feel, worse than the frustrations that come watching this team, the more concerning part is the apathy. And I was shocked last week. Obviously, late games, West Coast. Tuesday night was incredibly late against USC. But even Friday evening, and the amount of people, buddies in a group text, friends that I text during the course of the game, people that I talk to before, after, that are just out, that have found other things that fill their time, whatever that may be. That number continues to grow. We're talking about a lost generation of fans. I talk all the time about my love of Iowa basketball, and it was my first sporting love was Iowa hoops. And going back to the 80s when we only had 3 channels. And on Thursday nights back then, the only sports that I could watch throughout the course of the week during the winter was Iowa basketball. That was it. And what it meant in this state, what it meant to kids growing up, that's gone. And that's been lost now for a generation. The Big Ten network formation and all the games not being involved locally. And now we got the BTN Plus on top of the Big Ten network that you have, and just on and on and on. And this was a huge part of the Iowa culture. And as we sit here today after the anniversary of Chris Street's passing, and as we look back at his tenure, as we think back to Chris Street and the story, a kid that all he wanted was to be an Iowa Hawkeye, to be a Hawkeye basketball player, a guy that could have played college baseball, a guy that could have played college football at 6'8" as a quarterback, a guy that had everything that you want, and all he wanted as an Iowan was to be a Hawkeye basketball player. Those kids aren't around anymore. There aren't people like Chris Street. There aren't kids that have done it because Iowa basketball isn't that anymore. It is gone. And there's no getting it back with Fran McCaffrey. Unfortunately, that is the reality. Fran cannot get this program back. Fran cannot win this fan base back. So it's up to Beth Goetz to make a change. There will be no change for the Iowa women's basketball team. They will maintain, they will continue with Jan Jensen. This is not going to be a one and done situation, even as the losses continue to pile up and the frustration certainly piling up along with it. We're going to talk about the Iowa women's basketball program. And speaking of Beth Goetz, what exactly she's going to do when you look big picture of this athletic department. She has a lot on her plate going forward. We continue here at Locked On Hawkeyes as we talk Iowa basketball here on a Monday. Stay right there. We're back with more in a moment. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No more waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add something extra and some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Trent Condon back with you one final time. Hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on the podcast side, 5-star reviews, really do appreciate it and helps all those analytics out there and gets a computer spinning our way to get us in front of more Hawkeye fans. So as we wrap things up, over to the women. 50-49, they drop another one to Oregon. You're up by 13. You're up by double digits in the third quarter, and it was just a slow bleed of a lead. Now, you did it without Hannah Stuelke, and we know Hannah is one of the more important players on this squad. But to fall again, to now have the continued frustrations building inside this program. The Iowa women are still searching for their first quad one victory of the season. And when you look at their numbers metrically, and you look what's still in front of them, this is a team that is 12-7 on the year, has lost 5 consecutive games. They go to Washington, which is a coin flip game coming up on Wednesday night. They're home for Northwestern. They'll throttle them. You win both those games, we're back in good shape. However, lose to Washington, again, a coin flip game. After the Northwestern game, this is what you still have remaining. You're home for USC. You're projected to be an 11-point underdog there. You go to Minnesota and Nebraska. You're an underdog in both of those games. You get Rutgers at home. All right, another victory. So there's 2. Then 3 more consecutive games where you're pretty significant underdogs. 11.5 at Ohio State. 13.5 at home against UCLA. And by 8 at Michigan before you wrap up against Wisconsin. So you have 3 very winnable games left. 3 more wins is not going to make you an NCAA tournament team. 15 wins is not going to get there. All right, give them Washington. There's 4. That's still 16 wins. I mean, just to get to 18 and feel at least okay going into the Big Ten tournament, that means upsetting USC, UCLA, one of those 2 at home, or going on the road, beating a Nebraska team that just beat you, beating a Minnesota team that's one of the more surprising in the Big Ten, going to Ohio State that just suffered their first loss, or Michigan. Folks, I think this is more dire straits than a lot of people even want to realize. This thing's getting scary in a hurry. Lucy Olson has really struggled. And in Big Ten play, she's shooting 31% from the floor. The numbers are bad. And once you get away from in the paint, she's shooting 42% from outside the arc, the restricted area, and inside the three-point line. And she's only shooting 26% from 3. Folks, this team is in trouble. And as bright of a star as Aaliyah Guyton's going to be, and Taylor Stremlow can get to, and Tegan Mulaney, and Ava Hayden, and the excitement of the freshmen, you need more out of the veterans, and they just haven't been able to deliver. And maybe it's unfair. You drop a great play at the end, you get a good-looking shot, one that we have seen it happen a ton. Addison O'Grady knocks down that short jumper, and she didn't. And that's where we are. You know, Addison O'Grady is the best mid-range 2-point shooter on the team. She is. Best on the squad this year. Of at least players that have taken more than 10 shots. She's the best. You drew it up. You got her the shot. She didn't make it. She didn't make it. That's how it goes. Jan Jensen's going to continue to be positive because that's who she is. You have to get this one. You just do. Must win. Yeah, this is must win. A 5-game losing streak, something that hasn't happened in 11 years for Iowa women's basketball. It needs to end here against Washington. Finally, Beth Goetz. She's made one hire, one significant hire, and that is Jen Jensen. And it's been frustrating, right? But she's going to have to make a hire soon in men's basketball, maybe as soon as this year. She's going to have to make a hire in football soon in football. What is she looking for? And you as a fan base, what do you want to see? What are we looking for in the 2 most impactful positions in Iowa athletics? Who do you want? Who do you want to see? Hit us up on the comment section on YouTube. Hit subscribe while you're there. Let us know. Football, men's basketball. Who do you want? Who are some names that are realistic, that you believe are going to be the ones to get the Iowa program, football or basketball-wise, where you want to see it? We'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow. Scott Docterman from The Athletic also going to join us. We'll get ready for Iowa, Minnesota on the hardwood. The Gophers finally got a win. Can Iowa turn the tide here and give us a little hope? Can we get to February with some hope, please? Probably not. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. That's what we do. We're with you each and every day on the Locked On Network, and we got you covered with everything. Your favorite MLB team. It is Hot Stove has continued on. Now starting to get ready. What, a month away from spring training, right around the corner. The NBA is going. Of course, the NFL as we make our way to the conference championships. We got you covered there. Plus, Craig Sheeman, Locked On Big Ten. He has you covered on that front and a whole lot more. Thanks for being with us, Locked On Hawkeyes. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Go Hawks.